Friend, enemy, or frenemy? How do Indians view the rise of China and its implications for India's rise? Join the conversation on this important topic by taking the China Challenge survey. The survey has been put together by researchers at the Takshashila Institution. Answer our 10 simple questions and let your voice be heard in shaping India's policy towards China. For more details, log on to www.takshashila.org.in or you can click on the link and take the survey in the show notes. Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of All Things Policy. Today I am your host, my name is Rohan. I am the Assistant Program Manager at the Takshashila Institution, and today's discussion is centered around a very crucial topic, navigating India's new criminal justice landscape. Joining me as a guest will be Mariam Azeemuddin, who is the Assistant Program Manager at Takshashila, and she's joining us today to share valuable insights on the topic. Welcome, Mariam.
Thank you for having me, Rohan, and hello everybody. And in today's podcast, we're discussing a significant transformation in India's criminal justice system. Our topic is from IPC and CrPC to BNS and BNS, navigating India's new criminal justice landscape. We're going to be breaking down what these changes mean, why they're happening, and what impact they're going to have on India's legal landscape.
Thanks for joining me, Mariam. So I think we should begin with a historical context, some background. So the Indian Penal Code, or the IPC, and the Code of Criminal Procedure, or CrPC, have been the foundations of India's criminal justice system since about the 19th century. And these laws were instituted during the British rule, as we all know.
Yes, the Indian Penal Code, or IPC, was enacted in 1860, and the Code of Criminal Procedure, CrPC, followed in 1973. Though it replaced the earlier CrPC of 1898, despite numerous amendments, the core principles of these laws have remained largely unchanged, reflecting colonial-era thinking. Many legal experts, Rohan, argue that these laws, while robust, have become outdated and do not adequately address the complexities of modern Indian society. Hence, the need for comprehensive reform has led us to the transition into the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, that's the BNS, and the Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha, that's the BNSS.
Yeah, that makes logical sense. I mean, why are we an independent country still following laws that were instituted during the colonial times? It doesn't make much sense.
Right.
So I would love to talk about these new codes. I'm very excited about them, that these codes are set to replace the IPC and the CrPC, right? The BNS
Right.
and the BNSS. I would like to start with maybe asking you, what is the aim behind these new codes and why are they being transitioned from the old codes?
Right. So the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, or the BNS, focuses on the substantive criminal law, or essentially what constitutes a crime, and the corresponding penalties. While the Bharatiya Nyaya Suraksha, the BNSS, on the other hand, deals with procedural aspects, outlining the process for the investigation, prosecution, and trial of criminal cases. The main aim of these codes is to modernize India's criminal justice system, making it more efficient, just, and reflective of the contemporary social values.
Yeah. So, Mariam, let's dive into some key changes brought about by these new codes, okay? So, I think one significant shift that I am aware of is the decriminalization of certain minor offenses.
You're right. So, this is a crucial change, Rohan. And by decriminalizing the minor infractions, the new code aims to reduce the burden on courts, allowing them to focus on more serious crimes. This should help in speeding up the judicial process and reduce case backlogs. See, in the CrPC, there were numerous minor offenses that were being criminalized, leading to overcrowding in courts and prisons. And now with the change, with several minor offenses being decriminalized, it's going to reduce the burden on the judiciary and the law enforcement. And I'm going to speak about a few examples and listed down here for you, where one being adultery. So if you just look back at the previous laws, adultery, that was a criminal offense under section 497. and punishable by imprisonment, that has now been decriminalized following the Supreme Court's ruling that it is a matter of personal relationship and it's not a criminal offense. And so another one being, I would say, attempt to commit suicide. That again was a criminal offense under Section 309, punishable by imprisonment and or any fine. And now that again has been decriminalized, recognizing it as a mental health issue that requires medical and psychological support rather than punishment. And I think that's a very fair point to look into. And moving forward, I also would like to talk about how, violations of minor regulatory rules, such as not having a proper business license or a minor traffic infractions, were criminal offenses as well. These have been decriminalized, handling such infractions through administrative penalties and fines rather than criminal prosecution, which is fair. Again, these can be handled and rather just crowding up, the courts where a lot of things are still unsolved. And so this allows the focus to shift towards more serious crimes and a faster process of how we could go forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really surprised that these offenses were decriminalized so recently because they seem so obvious. Why would suicide be criminalized? Why would adultery be criminalized? It seems like it's from a time where the government really wanted to police every bit and piece of a person's life. So I'm very happy that we are modernizing the system and going ahead with making these changes. And I think another major innovation that we haven't talked about yet is the incorporation of technology. For instance, say the filing of FIRs. They can now be done online, of course. And there's a system for tracking the progress of cases digitally.
You're right. And this move from the traditional methods predominantly being used for filing FIRs, tracking cases, and other procedural aspects. And, the emphasis on digital processes such as online filing of FIRs, digital tracking, like I said, of case progress, and other technological integrations aimed at increasing transparency and efficiency. Digitalization is expected, to enhance transparency and accessibility, making the justice system more user-friendly for the public. And additionally, Rohan, the new codes place a stronger emphasis on victim rights. And that's, the victim's role and the rights were often limited and not adequately addressed. And this is something that had to be addressed and, brought forward. And there are provisions ensuring that victims have a more significant role and better support throughout the legal process, which has enhanced provisions for victim rights, ensuring better support and involvement of victims throughout the legal process. And this includes measures for victim compensation, protection, and participation in the judicial process.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally very happy to hear that there's a victim-centric approach being adopted now, because even when you talked about suicide being a criminal activity, it confused me because the person committing suicide is the victim at the end of the day, and they are not causing a harm to society as such. So to pigeonhole them as anything but a victim seems kind of misguided. So this victim-centric approach is great because I think it acknowledges the trauma and the difficulty faced by victims, and it also aims to provide them with a more supportive framework rather than a criminalizing framework.
You're right. And if you look at it, see, also the streamlining of legal procedures. Many procedures were lengthy and bureaucratic, and that has led to delay in the justice delivery. And, I feel like victims have just waited for their time, and I feel they've just, been part of unfair justice where they've just waited for their time and it just never came. And therefore, procedures have been streamlined to make the justice system more efficient and reduce the delays. And this includes faster investigation processes, quicker trials, and more stringent timelines for various legal processes. And going forward, the modernization of the substantive criminal laws, where I want to talk about how many laws were outdated and did not reflect modern societal values and norms. And now with the BNS being being transitioned from IPC, I would like to say that, how substantive criminal laws have been updated to reflect contemporary issues and the societal changes, ensuring that the legal framework is reflective to today's context. And that's about it.
Yeah, I'm really hopeful that the delays will be reduced significantly in moving forward, because everyone knows justice delayed is justice denied. So that's a really welcome step, in my opinion. Speaking of substantive criminal laws, Mariam, would you be able to share a few examples of the updated laws that are coming into place now?
Sure. I could do that. And some of the key substantive criminal laws updated in the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita to replace the Indian Penal Code. and reflect contemporary issues and societal changes. A few of them I would like to address are the cyber crimes. Right. So, the IPC did not adequately address crimes related to the digital world. I mean, given it's the 19th century origin,
Of course.
I just don't know what to say. Now we have the BNS with the comprehensive provisions for cyber crimes, including hacks, identity theft, cyber stalking, online frauds, reflecting, the increased prevalence and the complexity of digital offenses. And that's a big move. We know the amount of cyber crimes that take place day in and day out, and we just know how it goes. And one very important factor that has been, transitioned from the IPC is the gender specific crimes. So many gender specific crimes were either inadequately covered or addressed with outdated perspectives. And now we have the enhanced laws regarding sexual harassment, stalking, acid attacks, clearer definitions, and harsher penalties for crimes like marital rape. And that's like a very, very, vast topic that needs to be addressed. Marital rape and domestic violence to better protect women's rights. And that's a big move, Rohan.
Yeah.
And I just hope there is some, light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. We could record an entire podcast just about that.
Sure, we should. And then another thing is on the hate crimes and discrimination. So we had limited provisions addressing hate crimes based on religion, caste, and ethnicity. And now we have a more specific provisions against hate crimes, ensuring stricter penalties for offenses motivated by racial, religion, or caste-based discrimination. And laws to prevent and punish acts of lynching and mob violence. This has been on news for quite some time, and we know how the lynching has been taking place. So that's how it goes. And another very important transition is the environmental crimes. I hold this very personal, and environmental offenses were not comprehensively addressed, and that were really worrying me. And now it says that we have new laws focusing on environmental protection, including penalties for illegal mining, deforestation, population, and wildlife trafficking. That's like reflecting growing environmental concerns. So we're just hoping that these things do have some kind of a great effect on the public. Also, looking into white collar crimes, I would like to say that there were limited provisions addressing white collar crimes like financial fraud, embezzlement, and the corporate misconduct. Now we have detailed laws targeting economic offenses that include, insider trading, money laundering, corporate fraud, as well as penalties to deter financial crimes. And moving forward to human trafficking, we had inadequate measures against human trafficking and related offenses. And here we have strengthened laws against human trafficking with severe penalties for trafficking of forced labor, sexual exploitation, and organ trade. So provisions for protection and rehabilitation of the victims is something that's going to be considered. We have drug-related offenses as well, where it was outdated and limited provisions on drug-related crimes. I mean, knowing that it's like we just have a blindsided effect to where we know that things are happening, but then we don't have anything to enforce. So here now we have a comprehensive law addressing the production, distribution, and consumption of narcotics and the psychotropic substances, which is going to be focusing on both the criminalization and the rehabilitation. And then moving forward into consumer protection, how there was a limited focus on consumer rights and protection. Now we have new provisions to address consumer fraud, misleading advertisements and unsafe products, ensuring better protection for consumer rights in a rapid growing market. Lastly, I would just want to cover another last topic where it talks about a transition of data protection and privacy. And earlier, we had no provision for data protection and privacy at all. And now we have laws addressing the unauthorized collection, use, and the dissemination of personal data, reflecting the importance of data privacy in the digital age. And these updates in the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita ensures that India's criminal laws are better aligned with the current realities, addressing, the modern crimes and the societal change effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope it does do it justice and it is implemented in a systematic manner, because this is very important. And I think a lot of these may seem obvious to us at first glance, but the fact that we've been using something so outdated for such a long time really begs the question of why this wasn't done sooner or with more urgency. So I am really hopeful. I'm trying to be optimistic about this. And thanks for explaining all of this to us in a very exhaustive manner. It was quite educational. I would like to move on now to the enhanced law enforcement training, because training for law enforcement, of course, was based on the old codes, as you described.
Yes.
And those are, of course, often inadequate to deal with the modern challenges that we faced in the 21st century. So, what do you think we could change with respect to the training for law enforcement?
So, Rohan, law enforcement training programs have been revamped to align with the new codes. And as far as what I've heard, ensuring officers are better equipped to handle current legal and societal challenges is going to help. Also, I would like to draw some light about the ADR mechanisms, that's your alternate dispute resolution, like mediation and arbitration, that were underutilized.
Mhm.
And now we have a greater emphasis on ADR to resolve minor disputes out of court, reducing the burden on the judicial system, and also providing quicker resolution for the involved parties. And these changes represent a significant shift in India's approach to the criminal justice, aiming to moving more modern and efficient in the just legal system.
Great, thanks. I would like to move on now to the impact on law enforcement and the judiciary, right?
Right.
I think we should discuss the impact these changes will have in these two fields specifically.
You're right. So, for law enforcement agencies, the new codes will necessitate, updates in training and operational procedures. Police officers, will need to be educated on the new laws and how to implement these effectively. And this is something very important because they're on their feet at all times. And the judiciary too will have experience, and the judiciary too will need to experience and adjust to the period and the new laws, while judges and lawyers will need to familiarize themselves with the new provisions and procedures.
Yeah, this definitely won't happen overnight. I agree.
You're
It's
right.
going to be quite a long transitional period. I'm not blind to the reality, but I think while it might pose some initial challenges, I think the long-term benefits are manifold, because it'll be a more efficient, a more transparent system, and I am really optimistic.
You're right. And that's something only time will tell,
Of
Rohan.
course, yes. I would like to move on now to public perception. We've only talked about the laws themselves, but what about public perception? Because it plays a critical role in the success of these reforms. You might have a very progressive law, but if the public doesn't follow it, it kind of does not perform its purpose. So, what do you think has been the public's perception on this transition?
Indeed. So while many welcome, the changes as a necessary modernization, there are concerns about the potential, about the potential misuse and the practical challenges of implementation. For which addressing these concerns through public awareness campaigns and comprehensive training programs for all stakeholders, I feel should be vital.
Yeah, I mean, I think this will take up a larger chunk of energy than the laws themselves, instituting them and making the public aware about
You're
them,
right.
because sometimes that is often more important than the laws themselves. All right, then, Mariam, this was a really very insightful podcast. I learned a lot. Do you have any concluding remarks you wish to share on the new codes and the transition from the old codes?
For what I see, I would like to say that these new codes are a step in the right direction, but they address many of the criticisms levied against the Indian Penal Code and the Code of Criminal Procedure, such as the colonial roots and the inefficiency. However, the real test will be in their implementation, Ron.
Of course, that's always the trickiest part of any law.
So while the new codes are promising, law enforcement agencies will need significant support to adapt, and training resources and a clearer implementation strategy will be crucial.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Maybe before we end, I would just like to ask you: are there any case studies or real-world examples where these reforms have been implemented?
Yeah, I could give you a few examples where similar reforms have been implemented, and countries like South Africa and Canada, if you see, have undertaken comprehensive legal reforms in their criminal justice systems as well. And these examples can offer valuable lessons for India. And in South Africa, post the parent reforms were aimed at creating a more equitable legal system. And in Canada's legal reforms have focused on incorporating indigenous laws and practices. And these examples show that while the road to reform is challenging, it is definitely possible with the right approach and commitment. And that's something that needs to be taken up very seriously by each country that's planning on, who have tried to implement and transition their laws.
Yeah.
So moving to conclude, Rohan, the transition from the Indian Penal Code and the Code of Criminal Procedure to the BNS and the BNNS represent a significant milestone in India's legal history. This has been a big move, and the whole transition part is something that needs to be, taken up and really implemented rightly.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be with wait and watch to see what's going to happen. It's certainly a welcome step, I would say, and I'm very hopeful that at least if it doesn't completely work out, it is definitely more modern than its previous counterpart, and definitely some victims who were previously ignored will get the justice they rightfully deserve.
You're right.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us on this very insightful journey of a podcast, Mariam. Stay tuned for more episodes of All Things Policy, where we continue to explore the critical issues shaping our world.
You're right. Thank you, Rohan, for having me, and it was great having a discussion.
Great. See you next time.
Everybody.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.